Hello, this is Sabina at Cross Keys Crafts. Today I would like to make with you a card for a 21-year-old. I'll tell you a bit about the pattern in a moment. This card was inspired by something I saw on some Calcott's YouTube channel as well as on the one by Gemma Lee Crafts. Reason being Sam Calcott had released a new die to create this mechanism. It's called a winged pop-up card. I decided a while ago not really to buy mechanisms anymore, especially if I feel I can recreate this without getting the die. And quite often Sam Calcott says she's got something similar on her channel. But when I looked at the card, I sort of dissected the way it was created, and I think I found a way recreating the look of this without faffing too much about with cutting the card in the middle, because I'm creating this card from separate strips. I have worked it out on paper. I had to make some adjustments as well. I'll show you this in a moment in a bit of a zoom so you can take a screenshot of the measurements. I have pre-cut all the elements. I have scored them. I go through that with you, but I haven't glued it together, so I might find after all that it might not fit as well as I had done it in my head. The pattern I'm using today comes from this paper pad. It's called Grand Plans. I bought that, I'd say, about a year ago. I've still seen it recently. This is a 12 by 12. And I bought this because it's got loads of mail papers. You know, you've got beers, you've got some music related things, cars here as well. So I thought this would be good. But because it's a young man, I thought the records don't really work, you know, the old-fashioned ghetto blasters. So I decided to go for these t-shirts here. I thought they go nicely for a mail card for a young man. So, and I decided also to cut the card base just from that. This is, by the way, a bit of a linen texture, which is really nice. So I've just cut this card base 10 by 7 inches, and I scored it in the middle at 5, and that gives me the background for the mechanism. I think I might be wrong. The mechanism that Sam Calcott has, you don't need to put it into a card necessarily, but because we're working with strips, you definitely need to glue these down. As far as pattern is concerned, for the mats here in a moment, for the layers and the mats, you want to choose a pattern that works, you know, is a really small pattern. So I found the t-shirts worked for the bigger pieces, but they would not have worked for the small ones. So have a look in your stash what works. These, by the way, the stripes are also from this pad. And where are they, the blue ones? Oh, can't see them on the outside now, but they definitely are from there as well. And I also decided not to have them going upwards, because if I had cut them, I wouldn't have all the colours in them, but this way I had the red there. So yeah, that's just a little tip for choosing pattern cardstock. So I've told you about the card base now, and I'm moving this over now. Let me zoom in a little bit. Sorry for wobbling the camera. Move this down. So you need 5 strips. These are just my measurements. You can alter that, but I thought this worked out quite nicely. So you need 2 strips that are 10 inches long and 1.5 inches wide or high. And you score these 2 strips at 2.5, 5 and 7.5. And I've done this here. Let me just show them to you. I've chosen 2 green strips for that. I have chosen 2 different colours because I thought that looked a bit more natural to have the strips in different colours. If you have them all in the same colour it might look a bit awkward that you actually have cut the cardstock into strips. So, and once you have scored these, you've got a mountain fold in the middle and 2 valley folds on the side here. Then the next ones, I have cut these in blue. I made sure that all these colours went nicely with the pattern cardstock. This, by the way, is not a very heavy weight. I'd say 160. You don't need these to be too heavy because you're matting and layering them as well. So this one is 10 inches wide again, but only 1 inch high. And you score these at 3, 5 and 7. And again, the middle one is a mountain fold and the 2 other ones are valley folds. And then you need 1 strip for the center, which is again 10 inches wide and 2 inches high, and you just score that in the middle at 5. So, and that's a valley fold, so basically like the outer card base. So that's the 5 strips. So let me move this up here. As I said, ignore that I crossed something out because I realized we didn't need these mats and layers. So we need some mats and layers. You don't have to do the layers. If you just want to cut one lot, that's fine. So then just concentrate on these here. But if you want mats and layers, you need both these measurements. We need 8 pieces, 8 pieces that are 2 1/4 by 1 1/4. And the layers for this are 2 inches by 1 inch. And these are lengthways or rectangular, so again, watch your cardstock, especially if you've got directional cardstock. If you have like plain cardstock here, that's not a problem. Mine, let me just show you a plain one here. I had this grid pattern, so that wouldn't have mattered which way around it went. But it was actually a bit tricky because it's not a very even grid, so to the eye it looks like you cut it a bit wonky when you haven't. But I thought it went nicely with the green. So then you need 4 pieces each that are 1 3/4 wide and 3/4 high, and you layer that with pieces that are 1 1/2 by 1/2. And as I said, you need 4 pieces each of these. Then you need 2 pieces that are 2 3/4 by 3 3/4. That sounds wrong to me at the moment. Oh no, these are these bigger ones. So 2 3/4 by 3 3/4, and the the layer is 2 1/2 by 3 1/2, and you just need 2 of these. And then I had to squeeze this here on the side. Then you just need 2 little squares, 4 little squares, so 2 squares for the mats that are 1 3/4 by 1 3/4, and then for the layer 1 1/2 by 1 1/2. So I'm leaving this here for just a second if you want to take a screenshot. So, and that's all there is to it, and I'll show you now how we put these together. As I said, I have already pre-cut these, but I want to show you, actually, let me zoom out, a little trick how to cut, especially the small bits. First of all, I have cut these strips here from a long strip. So I cut it to the right width, which, let me just check that again. This, for example, is 1 1/4. And then I cut them apart afterwards. I didn't cut them sort of that way. I thought this was easier. So I did that the same with these here, rather than cutting them individually. But I sometimes find that when especially when I've got smaller sections like here, they're really difficult to cut in my guillotine. Let me just get my guillotine ready and I'll show you how you can solve that problem. So I've been working with A4 cardstock, and that is 11 and, well, just under 3/4 there. So that's really tricky to then sort of work out the length here. So what I would do to start with is cut this down to a length where it's easy for me to measure this end. What I mean is I would just shove this over and put this on 11.5. Yeah, so I'm just cutting off a little bit. So if I then want to create a 1-inch strip or even a 1/2 inch, I just move this from 11.5 to 11 rather than trying to figure out here what I've got. And then that gives me 1/2 inch strip on that end. Yeah, and I find that so much easier to work it out here and have an even measurement than having something in between. And this is how I worked these out, the really small ones. Yeah, I hope that's a useful tip for you, because I used to struggle to get the measurements, especially when you, sorry, I've got a bit of shade there, if you know the guillotine, because you can't see the 1/2 inch here. It's not even marked on the guillotine. So if you concentrate on this side, it's so much easier. So if I want another 1/2 strip, I now go from 11 to 10.5, or even if you want a 1.5 inch, you go from 11 to 9.5, and that makes it so much easier. Obviously you can do the same thing that way around. So instead of having 8 1/4, you just cut 1/4 off, go down to 8, and then start from there. When you fold and burnish your card, so your strips here, make sure they don't sit wonkily like this. Make sure they sit straight, and then you reinforce the score line. Otherwise this won't work. So even this one, sometimes the cardstock moves a little bit in the scoreboard, and then it's not quite a straight line, so you just need to push it into place. I think I've done this one. Same if you start in the middle, make sure push this over, have this straight, press it down, and then burnish this. So I've got my card base here and my first strip. This is the one that is, let me just check again, 1.5 inches wide. We've got 2 of those. I'm starting with 1, and I'm putting glue just on the outer rectangle here. So make sure you get it the right way around. So this is the valley fold here, and I'm just putting this into the top corner, but I'm making sure before I press it down that this strip sits straight. If I find this is a wee bit longer, I can always cut it down afterwards a little bit here, but at the moment it's important that this sits straight, and then I can press this down. So I'll then use my next one. Again, I've got the mounted fold in the middle here, the valley fold, and again I'm putting glue on this rectangle, and now put this right next to the one here, no gap. You could create a card where you've got gaps, but I think the look is here nicer if I have it straight, especially for the middle bits where I will have the matten layer sitting on more than one strip. So again, I actually forgot to do that. Make sure this sits straight, but it should do really if I've cut them all right. So the next one is this one here, and yeah, that one you just put glue on, theoretically the whole lot, but I'm just putting it on this side at the moment. because that one does not pop up at all. So again, ensure it sits straight. Also make sure they don't overlap, don't want that, and always make sure you're on the score line here as well. You don't want to go over that. If you're not sure, use the collal glue or acrylic glue, then you can move it over a little bit. With my magic glue I don't have really a lot of wiggle room. So, and then I just add the blue one again and the green one. I quickly do this off camera. So now that this has dried, I can fold these all flat, as flat as I get with the little bit of bulk there in the fold. Might have to burnish these again just to keep them down. And now I put glue on all these rectangles here and then just close the card on that. And I already know I've got a bit of overhang, but as I said, I can remedy that afterwards. I might have to push this one in a little bit. So I will show you that on camera, but I will speed this up a little bit. I have left this to dry for a minute, and now I can see the overhang I have, and I'm just coming in with my scissors and I'm just cutting that off. If you wanted to and you're too worried about this, what you can do is start gluing the strips down here and then do the second step on the back and then cut the overhang off the back. That might be better actually. I didn't think about that. So I'm just coming in here. Also, a thought I had earlier, but I was just getting confused about the measurements. You could obviously cut these strips shorter on the inside or the outer card just a wee bit wider, but I think it's fine. And I'm also not too bothered about this peeping out a little bit, or am I? Or I might just cut it off. But as I said, if you had that on in the back, it wouldn't show too much. Just that. So that's fine now. Important thing is that the card closes nicely, and there you've got the pop-up elements. So all we need to do now, make sure it's all adhered nicely, is to glue our mats down. So, and if I haven't measured or calculated this, then this will work like this. By the way, these two pictures, I made sure that I cut them out so I could see the t-shirts. I wanted this one in the middle and this one here. I made sure I didn't cut this one off too much, so I got these two in. So they go here, the big ones. And then we've got the ones that are two squares. They sit here. And as I said before, I'm going to have that as a horizontal pattern. Let me just see if I can flatten that a little bit so it doesn't move too much. These strips here, they go on the top and the bottom, and then these here, they sit on the blue mats here. And again, here I would make sure they go in opposite directions so it looks interesting. So I will glue these down off camera, and then I also need to make some numbers, or a number 21, and I'll find a happy birthday and have a look where I place that. Okay, before I place the mats down, a little disclaimer. The way I showed you to glue it down, don't do it that way. Do these individually. It wasn't until I switched the camera off that I had realized that this strip had actually gone underneath the green one here, and there was a tiny white gap. So don't do it that way. I peeled it off. Obviously the paper tore. I'm not too bothered about that because I think I can remedy that by just gluing it back on. So instead of folding it down, do them individually and just glue these ends down here. So I think what I will do is take the double layer I just had, oh, it's just stuck back on. I can peel that off a little bit, cut this off. Because I'm putting on a mat anyway, it doesn't really matter. So I can put this in place here where it does belong and make sure it's between these two strips and not underneath. So, but if you're wondering, I always keep these things in because they can happen, and this is the first time I'm making this card, so I'm basically putting glue on again and sticking this down here. So that's a little tip from me. So I've glued down all my mats and layers. With this pattern here, with the squares in the middle, I decided to have this pattern going upwards. I thought that made a nice change to the one that's going horizontally. And I've also just cut a 21, or rather two of them, one to pop onto these squares. I decided to not introduce another colour and just go with the white, and I will use the same 21 on the outside. And then I had a look in my sentiment stash and I found a strip that had different happy birthday sentiments and different blue tones and some grey and some cream, and I thought these look quite nice. Obviously I could stamp some and stick them on here. The only thing I'm on the fence about is whether I want them on all the rectangles or just one or a few of these. So I thought they could be quite interesting if I had them on all of these. But I'll have a little think, and yeah, I'll do this off camera and then I'll just show you the finished card. Here's the finished card. I kept it simple on the outside. I'm on the fence whether I want to add the recipient's name maybe here. I might do that with my We Are Memory Keepers punch board. But otherwise, as I said, I kept it simple because the most important thing is the inside. And when the recipient opens this, you can see the things pop up. I only put 2 strips there with Happy Birthday. I thought that was enough. And I kept these pictures as they were. I thought about adding something else to these, but I think they'll work nicely as basically like toppers. And as I said, just a little 21 there. So when the recipient gets it, he can set it up like this. And yeah, I think it's a very versatile card depending on what pattern you use. You can, as I said, put proper toppers on here, as long as you don't create too much bulk, because you obviously got some double layers here, but I'm sure this will still fit in a 5x7 envelope. And yeah, I think this is really nice. I also thought about creating a pocket here and putting like a gift card in here, or you could put some money in there. I might do that, but I haven't quite decided yet. But yeah, I think this is really cool, and it saved me from having to buy a die. If you like this card too, you might want to give me a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more of what I'm creating, I usually post at least twice a week. You might want to subscribe to my channel. I'd be very happy about that. And I'll see you soon with another video.